Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Against the Odds. So last week on our Against Odds poll, it was Mayael's Aria blowing everything else out of the water. So this week we are heading to Modern to play a deck that I'm calling Troll Song Naya. So a quick reminder before we break down Troll Song Naya. If you enjoy Against Odds and you enjoy this deck, it would be awesome of you if you could take a quick second, click that subscribe button right down in the corner of your screen. It's a great way you can support the site and the channel for free. So let's break down Troll Song Naya. So first off, we got to talk about the winning card, Mayael's Aria. So Mayael's Aria is this really unique enchantment. It's only 3 mana, and it says, at the beginning of our upkeep, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on all of our creatures if we have a creature with the power 5 or greater, and then if we have a creature with the power 10 or greater, we get to gain 10 life, and then, most importantly, if we have a creature with the power of 20 or greater, we get to win the game right there on the spot on our upkeep. So the idea of this deck is we are going to win the game with Mayael's Aria. And this might sound easy. You just play a 20 power creature, you get the Mayael's Aria, you win the game. The complicated part is there aren't 20 powered creatures in Magic. There isn't any creature that just says, oh, 20/20. That would make it too simple. We just put that creature in our deck, figure out a way to get it on the battlefield, and we win the game. So we got to do a bit of work to get a 20 powered creature. That's one of the complications of Mayael's Aria. Of course, the other complication is it's pretty slow. We got to find a 20 power creature, make a creature 20 power, wait till our upkeep. If a creature is going to have 20 power, it's probably going to take a little bit of doing. So it's kind of slow, and it's very much win more. But back to the 20 powered creature thing. How do we solve the 20 powered creature problem? And for this, we are digging pretty deep. We have everyone's favorite Moss Bridge Troll, a 7 mana 5/5. And yes, I hear you wondering, it says 5/5, how's it a 20/20? Well, it has an ability where you can tap any number of untapped creatures, discounting Moss Bridge Troll itself, and as long as those creatures have a total power of 10 or greater, Moss Bridge Troll gets +20/+20, making it a 25/25 until end of turn. So the idea is, we get the Mayael's Aria on the battlefield, we get the Moss Bridge Troll on the battlefield, with at least 10 more power of other creatures. On our upkeep, we tap those creatures, make Moss Bridge Troll a 25/25, and win the game. So that's what we're trying to do with this deck. The problem is, Moss Bridge Troll is 7 mana, and 7 mana is a lot for Modern, so we need a way to get it into play a little bit quicker. And for this, we got 2 different plans. First off, we have Mosswort Bridge, a hideaway land. So when it comes into play, we get to look at the top 4 cards of our library and exile 1 of them. Then, if we have at least 10 power of creatures in total between all of our creatures, we can cast the card from under Mosswort Bridge for just a single green mana. So the idea here is we will exile the Moss Bridge Troll under the Mosswort Bridge, Moss Bridge Troll, Mosswort Bridge, and then get 10 power of creatures or more on the battlefield, cast the Moss Bridge Troll on turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, get it a little bit sooner, tap the creatures, and since we need to have 10 power worth of creatures to cast the Moss Bridge Troll from under Mosswort Bridge, we already have 10 power worth of creatures for Moss Bridge Troll, so we just tap those same creatures, Moss Bridge Troll becomes a 20/20, we win the game. So that's one plan. Plan 2 is See the Unwritten. See the Unwritten lets us look at the top 8 cards of our library and put a creature from among them on the battlefield. If we have a Ferocious, so a creature with power 4 or greater, we get to grab 2 creatures instead. So when I was building the deck, I knew we needed another way to cheat our Moss Bridge Troll into play to find it. And there's like Summoners Trapped and some different things. See the Unwritten is the perfect card in our deck for a couple reasons. First, we want big creatures to trigger our Mosswort Bridge, so we're naturally going to have Ferocious from See the Unwritten. And as you'll see as we talk about the rest of the creatures, we have a lot of creatures with 5 power. That's kind of the magical number in our deck, because 2 5-powered creatures equals Mosswort Bridge and Moss Bridge Troll. But anyway, so we have a 5-powered creature, gives us Ferocious, we cast See the Unwritten. Since See the Unwritten lets us grab 2 creatures, and we already have at least one 5-powered creature, if we can get Moss Bridge Troll and another 5-powered creature, we immediately have enough power on the battlefield to tap our 2 other creatures, make Mossbridge Troll huge, and win the game. So that's why it's Seed the Unwritten. But anyway, so just to rehash where we're at so far, Mayael's Aria on the battlefield, get a Mossbridge Troll on the battlefield as quickly as possible, hopefully with Mosswort Bridge or Seed the Unwritten, have enough other power to tap it, and then we win the game. So I mentioned 5-powered creatures, and these are kind of the core of our deck. With these cards, any 2 of these give us enough power that we can, for one thing, cast the creature we have under Mosswort Bridge, hopefully our Mossbridge Troll, and any 2 of these also give us enough power that we can tap 2 of them to trigger our Mossbridge Troll, make it a 25-25. Any 1 of them will trigger Ferocious on our Seed the Unwritten and let us get 2 creatures. So Sheltering Agent, a 2-mana 5/5, has Trample. Sounds good, except it has cumulative upkeep of putting a +1/+1 counter on a creature an opponent controls. So if our opponent has no creatures, it's going to die in our upkeep. If our opponent has creatures, we can choose to, on our first upkeep, after Sheltering Agent comes into play, put a +1/+1 counter on something. On our next upkeep, we got to put 2 +1/+1 counters, split up however we want on something, and then 3, then 4. So we can't stick around very long, but it's a good blocker in the early game, and depending on the situation, we can sometimes put counters on something that isn't that threatening. And then we have Quell Sisma Behemoth, a 5/5 for only 2 in a red mana. The problem is it can't attack or block unless we pay 2, so it's not necessarily good on offense or defense, at least right away. If we have that mana, it gets good on offense or defense. That's why it's better than something like Lupin Prototype. Our deck is much more likely to have 2 mana sitting around to let it attack or block than we are to be empty-handed. Woolly Factor, finally a creature with no downside, just a 5/4 for a red, a green, and a white. So there's a big color restriction here, but just power and toughness to convert a mana cost, Woolly Factor is very strong. And then, of course, the big hitter, the card that will hopefully keep us alive against all the aggressive decks in Modern, Thragtusk, gains us 5 life when it enters. When it dies or leaves the battlefield, we get a 3/3 beast, plus it has 5 power. So the main reason we wanted 5-power creatures, as I mentioned before, is just the math lines up really well with all of our other cards in the deck. So that's why we're focused on these cards over some other potentially more powerful creatures at the same converted mana cost. We wanted creatures that had the most power, literal power, not the most power in terms of how strong they are in actual gameplay. The rest of the deck, we have some mana dorks to speed things up. Birds of Paradise Noble Hierarch let us play our Woolly Factors on turn 2. Our Mayael's Aria on turn 2. Sylvan Carry added, just kind of a backup mana dork. Some cases we're really going to want to cast our Mossbridge Troll for 7 mana. We got to get up to 6 mana for Seed the Unwritten, so having some ramp is important. We also have 3 Path to Exiles as our only real removal spells in the main deck. As far as the mana base, Gavany Township, we kind of have a backup plan with this deck, and it is we play a lot of really bad but really big creatures, so occasionally we can just play our Quell Sisma Behemoth and play our Woolly Thractors, put a bunch of counters on them, and kill our opponent. So that's our backup plan. Gavany Township also lets our mana dorks attack, so we make our Birds of Paradise and our Noble Hierarchs into real creatures that can attack and block rather than 0-powered creatures. Then we got some fetch lands, got some shock lands, got some basic lands. Moving to the sideboard, we get more removal. Lightning Bolt and Sudden Shock can hopefully keep us alive against aggro decks with Goblin Guide, also gets Infect. Anger of the Gods is really helpful against Affinity, against any sort of go-wide token or aggro deck. Rest in Peace fights against Dredge, other graveyard decks. Stony Silence, also for Affinity. And then we have some more 5-powered creatures. And Moikoid Shepherd lets us gain some life whenever a creature with power 5 or greater dies. Spearbreaker Behemoth basically makes all of our creatures uncounterable, and it is uncounterable itself. Also a 5/5 for 4, but it's there to fight against Remand and Cryptic Command and all those type of counter spells. And then Wear Ancient Threads is our surprise win condition from the sideboard. We can bring in Wear Ancient Threads whenever a creature with power 5 or greater enters the battlefield under our control. 5 damage to a creature or player. So we get that on the battlefield. We play our Spearbreaker Behemoths, we play our Trolls and our Thragtusks, and just kill our opponent that way. So, and it can also fight against creatures too, but it's mostly there as a backup plan for killing our opponent. So that is Troll Song Naya for Modern. And I don't know about this deck. My big concern is Maya's Aria is just very slow and very win more. So I think we can occasionally win games with this deck. My question is, how many games can we actually win with Maya's Aria? So I imagine to make Maya's Area work and win with Mossbridge Troll, which is necessary to make Mayael's Area work, we need to have a bunch of Thragtusks and Woolly Thocters and those type of creatures on the battlefield. How many of those games are we not going to just win with our Thragtusk and Woolly Thocters and actually win with Mayael's Area? So that's kind of my worry, is I think we'll occasionally go like turn 1 Birds of Paradise, turn 2 Woolly Thocter, turn 3 Woolly Thocter, turn 4 Thragtusk, and just have all these huge creatures and kill our opponent. But that's not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the combo kill. So I think we'll win more games with this deck than we'll win with Mayael's Area combo. But that's just Mayael's Area. There's not much we can do about that because it needs huge creatures. That's how the card is made. There's no way we can trigger Mayael's Area to win without having huge creatures. And sometimes when you have huge creatures, you just win the game, even if you don't want to. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to say we win. I think we can win games. I'm going to say we win about 40% of the time just by slamming big creatures, and hopefully at some point over the course of the game, this machine, all these pieces will come together. We'll get the Mossbridge Troll from under the Mosswort Bridge and win that way. So I don't know. It should be interesting. Oh, anyway, that's been our deck tech for Troll Song Naya. I hope you enjoy the gameplay videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.